The past few days, I've been doing a trilogy of videos on current DC events. On Monday, I did a video on the life and slow, painful death of DC Universe. Then I made a video on Ray Fisher and Warner Brothers, and feel free to check those out. But today, we talk the myth, the legend, the reality, the Snyder Cut of Justice League. I'll talk about its history as well as what we can expect, but first, I'll give you a very brief history on the DCEU. Though I'll probably do a full-length video on it one day. So, around 2006-2007-ish, Warner Brothers realized that Marvel Studios was going to do the, MCU, and decided that they should look into doing something similar. They had the idea to beat Marvel to the punch on making a big team-up movie by starting with a Justice League movie and doing solo movies afterward. They were planning on doing a movie called Justice League Mortal, which was planned for a 2009 release and would have been directed by George Miller. This ended up getting cancelled for various kind of boring reasons, and Warner Brothers decided that since a Green Lantern movie that had been in development hell for some time was finally making some leeway, that would be the first movie in their shared universe. Well, Green Lantern was a flop, leading to Warner Brothers deciding instead to make their upcoming Superman reboot Man of Steel the first film in the DCEU. Man of Steel didn't do amazingly well, but it did well enough that Warner Brothers decided not to disown it and keep going with that universe. They originally wanted to jump straight to a Justice League movie after Man of Steel, and hired Will Beall to write a Justice League script, which they promptly threw in the trash. This led to Zack Snyder, director of Man of Steel, and David S. Goyer, the writer of Man of Steel, to pitch their idea on how to continue the franchise. The reason I mention Will Beall's script at all is that it may have had a pretty big impact on what Snyder and Goyer would decide to do. Beall's script was about an already formed Justice League fighting Darkseid when he invades Earth, and the Flash having to go back in time in order to prevent a dystopian future in which Darkseid wins. Yeah, this might sound familiar to you if you've been following the Snyder Cut news. There were two main fundamental problems with this script. One, if this was made, that would mean the first movie in the DCEU would see Superman's origin in a world with few or no superheroes, and the second movie would show a team of superheroes who have not only already had their origins played out, but apparently have already formed a team. That would not cut it. The movie needed setup. And two, the movie was rushed trying to fit so much into such a small runtime. Goyer and Snyder would try to fix this. Their idea was to have 5 movies make up the core of the DCEU, with other spin-offs and solo movies happening around those 5 movies. Man of Steel was the first of these movies. The second movie would be Batman v Superman, which would introduce Batman and Wonder Woman and set up for the Justice League movie. Then, movies 3 through 5 would be a Justice League trilogy. The first movie would see the Justice League form and take down Steppenwolf, a sort of herald for Darkseid, and movies 2 and 3 would be the fight against Darkseid with time travel stuff thrown in, which is not the subject of this video. Anyway, Warner Brothers liked this plan because it fixed the problems of not having setup and cramming too much into one movie that Beall's script had. So it began. Goyer ended up leaving the franchise after Batman v Superman, presumably out of creative differences. This led to Chris Terrio rewriting the script to BVS and writing the script for Justice League. The original plan was for Justice League 2 to end with Darkseid defeating the Justice League on a cliffhanger where the nightmare from Batman v Superman becomes real. Justice League 3 would be all about using time travel to fix it. Justice League Parts 1 and 2 were both announced in 2014, with Part 1 given a 2017 release date and Part 2 not given a release date. Though, later that year, its release was set for 2019 with the intention to film both movies at once. This was to give fans the assumption that the Justice League would beat Darkseid at the end of Justice League Part 2, making for a shocking reveal when the movie came out. Then, Warner Brothers would announce Part 3, which would release probably sometime in 2021. But after the bad critical reception of BVS, filming for Part 2 was put on hold, renaming the movies to just Justice League and Justice League 2. Fairly early on in the post-production of Justice League, Zack Snyder stepped down to mourn the loss of his daughter. That's when Joss Whedon came in. Joss Whedon was originally hired by Warner Brothers to make adjustments to Justice League, the plan being for Whedon to rewrite parts of the script and for reshoots to be directed by Snyder. But when Snyder stepped down, Whedon was hired as the new director, and these reshoots became more extensive. The original cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League was almost 5 hours long, though keep in mind this was just an assembly cut that was essentially everything they had shot, with the plan being to edit it down to 3 or 3.5 hours for release. But with Whedon at the helm, Warner wanted the movie to be 2 hours long max. The movie that we got was probably about 30 to 40% Snyder footage and 60 to 70% Whedon footage. It followed the rough skeletal story of Zack Snyder's version of the Justice League being formed by Batman and Wonder Woman and them resurrecting Superman to fight Steppenwolf, who wants the mother boxes to bring Darkseid to Earth. But besides that, they're very different. While 30 to 40% of Justice League is Zack Snyder's footage, keep in mind that Zack Snyder's version was going to be much longer, meaning that only about 20% of the footage that Zack Snyder shot made it to screen. But now we're getting Justice League as a 4-part miniseries on HBOMax, and it'll probably end up being longer than what the Snyder Cut would have been in theaters, at more than an hour runtime per episode. Also, interestingly, there actually will be a small amount of reshoots for the Snyder Cut. Only about 1 to 2 weeks worth, though. I think these reshoots are less for changing the plot of the movie, and more for tweaking it to better match the TV format. For example, if there's a scene an hour in that they need to cut the first episode at, but it's a dull, normal scene, the reshoots might refilm the scene to make it an exciting cliffhanger, or add a new, shorter scene right before it to act as a cliffhanger to bring viewers back for the next episode. I think there might be some plot stuff, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So, what can we expect of the Snyder Cut? Well, a lot of things. Let's start with the general plot of the movie. As I said before, the Justice League we got follows the same basic elevator pitch plot of the Snyder Cut, but that doesn't mean they're the same. Without getting into nitty-gritty stuff, we can first say that there would have been more focus on backstory for Aquaman, the Flash, and Cyborg. Now, I think that the Aquaman stuff might be trimmed down a little for the HBOMax release, just because we don't really need an explanation of Aquaman given that we have an Aquaman movie. As for the Flash, there was a cutscene showing Barry saving Iris from being hit by a car. It's been speculated that we would have seen more of Iris and that this scene might have been Barry first realizing his powers. While none of that's been confirmed, I would say it's pretty likely we'll see more of Iris than just one scene. Also, apparently we'd see a scene in which Barry discovers and experiments with using his speed for time travel. As for Cyborg, he would have apparently been the soul of the movie, and we would have seen a lot more backstory, including him developing his powers. We would have also seen flashbacks of his mother Eleanor Stone, and his father would have died. As for Batman, instead of that opening scene with the Parademon, Bruce would have gone to Arkham and paid a visit to Lex Luthor, taking his journal in the process, which contains notes Lex learned from Zod's ship, and Bruce would have used that as reference instead. This would have led to Lex Luthor escaping from Arkham altogether. Diana would find an ancient altar shrine thing telling of the ancient battle on Earth with Steppenwolf, except the battle wouldn't have been Steppenwolf invading Earth, but instead a young Darkseid. And the symbol that we see Steppenwolf make with his axe in the Whedon version would have been explained to be Darkseid creating a version of the anti-life equation. Then the League forms and resurrects Superman. But as Cyborg plugs into Zod's ship, we would have had another nightmare scene like from BVS. We kind of got a glimpse of this in the Snyder Cut trailer, seeing the Hall of Justice in shambles and then panning to the Omega symbol, but then we'd see Darkseid use the mother boxes to terraform the planet. And when they resurrect Superman, he would kind of be evil for a while, wearing the black suit before somehow becoming Superman again. Interestingly, for all of you out there that thought that Superman and Man of Steel in BVS wasn't Superman, you're kinda right, because the plan was that Superman would finally evolve into the Superman we know from the comics here. Then they would all unite and fight Steppenwolf, but the battle would have gone a little bit differently. Cyborg would have had to use his connection to the mother boxes to stop the Unity, but he would fail. Steppenwolf would stop him and literally rip him in half. So then, the Flash would have to use his experiments from previously in the film to go back in time moments before and use the Speed Force to project Cyborg inside the mother boxes. The spirit of the mother boxes would take the form of Vic's dead parents and try to convince him to stop and stay in the mother boxes with his parents, but he has to make the difficult decision to instead stop the unity. Steppenwolf, realizing he's failed, would try to take a boom tube back to Apocalypse, but Wonder Woman would cut off his head before he could go back. Then, the team would stand together and see Darkseid on the other side of the boom tube as it closed, realizing that the worst is yet to come, but that they had saved the world. So that's the plot, but there's a little more to talk about, including various characters with their roles being reduced or removed. I already talked about Vic's parents and Iris, but there are more. Firstly, Willem Dafoe's Vulko was originally supposed to be introduced in a small role in Justice League. Also, Ryan Choi, aka The Atom, was supposed to appear as someone working at Star Labs, though he wouldn't have suited up as The Atom in the movie. As for Darkseid, he wouldn't have done much action in the movie. He was going to appear in the battle scene flashback for a cameo at the end, the nightmare scene, and maybe a couple other short scenes on Apocalypse, either as flashbacks or checking in on Steppenwolf. Lex Luthor, as I hinted at earlier, was going to have a much larger role in the movie than just a mid-credit scene, and likewise so was Deathstroke. Darkseid's torturer, Darkseid, was also supposed to appear in a minor role. Now, let's talk about the elephants in the room, Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter. They appear on the poster, so how much are they going to be in the movie? Well, it was planned that Green Lantern was going to have a couple cameos in Justice League before actually joining the team in Justice League 2. I think these scenes were shot, but to keep the surprise, there was no Green Lantern actor or suit on set. I think during post-production they were planning on casting a Green Lantern and filming them in front of a green screen before superimposing them into the shots and putting a CG suit on them. Green Lantern appears on the poster, but it's just some generic looking placeholder guy. There will probably be an actual guy cast as Green Lantern that they're keeping a secret. Maybe it's Ryan Reynolds, as everyone is saying, maybe it isn't. Now, Martian Manhunter. So, in Man of Steel and BVS, there was a character named General Calvin Swanwick. When these movies came out, there were fan theories that Swanwick was actually Martian Manhunter, and Zack Snyder liked this idea so much that there were plans to have Swanwick appear in a couple Justice League scenes, one of which would have revealed him as Martian Manhunter. But Harry Lennox, the actor that plays General Swanwick, was busy during filming, so it was assumed Snyder would film it during post-production or reshoots, but that never happened. So, why does Martian Manhunter appear on the posters? I don't really know. But I'm assuming that these new reshoots will probably add Martian Manhunter back into the movie, though like Green Lantern, it's just going to be some cameos. So there you have it. Everything that we can expect for the Snyder Cut. This video is pretty long. Really long for a channel that uploads daily videos. Wait, you didn't know I upload daily videos? Well, I do, so subscribe for that. Alright, I'll see you guys. Bye.